communicated to mankind. Job chapter 33. God says that as we lay our head on the pillow, then he seals our instructions. He speaks to man as we sleep in a dream or in a vision. So I wanted to share this one dream about you, dream that I had, because I think it's going to be important to parents who have teenagers, right? Teenagers, I was like, they're difficult, right? And so our concern is for our teenagers. Our job is to raise them the right way and to be able to help them accomplish all that they were created to be. Well, my daughter, we were living up in New Hampshire. She was 16, and she was dating this guy that I didn't like. I did not like this guy at all, man. And as a father, it was my right not to like him, right? And she would come up to me. She's like, Dad, you know, all these guys that come up and visit me and come over to the house. She says, you don't like any of them. I said, that's right. I don't like any of them. It's my job as your dad to protect you from these guys. You know, I know what a 16-year-old boy was like. Right? And so she was dating this guy, and it wasn't a good situation. There was rebellion in her. Sorry, Jessica, I know you're going to watch this video, but I have to tell the truth. She had rebellion in her. She was 16 years old. I'm not going to go into the long story, but I ended up having to ask her to leave, which is one of the hardest things I had to do as a father, to ask a 16-year-old daughter to leave the house, because she was disrupting the atmosphere of my house. I can deal with a lot of stuff, but rebellion and disobedience is the two things that I won't allow in my house. It's the same thing that God doesn't allow, rebellion and disobedience. And if she could come underneath that, then we could have worked things out, but I had to kick her out of the house. As a parent, I cried every night. Me and my wife, we just cried every night. I didn't like this guy. And so one night, I prayed every night for her and asked God to cover her, to protect her. And I was grieving. I'm literally sobbing every night in tears for my daughter. And so one night I'm just praying, I'm asking the Lord, and I'm just praying about her life. And Lord, don't you have a future for her? You know, is she going to get involved in drugs and alcohol and go down the same path that many other people go? And I was just giving God the business because I loved my daughter. And that night I have a dream. And again, I find myself in a room and I'm like, you know, how'd I get here? And I see a guy. I'm standing up and I see a guy sitting in a chair in front of me. And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, what the heck's going on? And a voice speaks. This is your future son-in-law. And this is what I created him to be. Integrity, character, a lot of other things that I'm not going to mention because Scotty's going to watch this video too. Don't want him to know yet. But anyway, he started telling me everything about this guy's life. He said, this is your future son-in-law. And so I go up and I look behind, you know, try to look at his face, and he turns his head this way. So I'm looking here. And so I go to the other side, and he turns his face this way. And I wake up. And I'm thinking, wow, that was incredible. It's God's heart, of a father's heart, was grieving. And God, because I valued dreams, showed me the future. I was in tears. And so, you know, we worked things out with my daughter to come back. And one day she was upstairs, and I went up there and I kicked her and I said, get up out of bed. And she's like, what? And I said, you know, the Lord just spoke to me about your future husband. And I said, the guy you're with is not him. So anyway, long story short, we ended up moving from New Hampshire, and she moved with us to Texas. And she was dating these other guys, which I didn't like them at all either. And she was working at a store where all these guys were hitting on her. And I would tell her, just tell those guys, leave you alone. You know, just tell them to quit bothering you. Well, one day she came home and she said, Dad, this guy, he called up at the store that she was working at and invited her to lunch. And I don't know why I said this, but I said, I felt it for some reason. And I said, do you know how hard it was for that guy to ask you to lunch? I said, why don't you say yes to him? So she calls him back and says, yes, she would go to dinner with him. And I said, you know the rule. I have to meet his spirit. Meaning, when I shake your hand, I can feel your spirit. And so he comes and he knocks on the door, and I opened up the door, and I was like, this guy don't look too bad, you know. But the moment I shook his hand, I was like, that's the guy. That's the guy I met in a dream 2 years ago. And I was like, kept my mouth shut. And so they left. I told my wife, I said, babe, that's him. That's the guy I met in a dream. That's the one the Lord showed me. And so they dated for a little bit, and within about 60 days, he came knocking on my door. He sat down. He's like, Reese, you know, this is hard. He says, I want to ask for your hand, your daughter's hand in marriage. And he says, what really blessed my heart when I knew he was the right guy, he said, and I'm willing to wait as long as it takes for you to give me your blessing. It just broke me. And so I wanted to share that story with you for this. God cares about your children. If they're involved in alcohol and drugs, or they're not going on the right path, God has a plan for them. God will restore them. If you pray for them, God will restore them to their place. And so I wanted to encourage you with that story, that a father, we want our daughters to marry somebody that would keep them and take care of them better than we would. And God is faithful. He is faithful. So I just want to just pray for those of you who have children who are almost like the prodigal son, or who aren't in a good place. I pray that God would start moving and acting on your behalf for your children, that he would swoop down and he would pull them out of darkness, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's a bad relationship. I pray now for each one of them that God would touch them and restore them to their rightful place of who they are and what they're going to become. So hope this blesses you, and thank you for watching it.